break down the Chicago Bears running back position next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron, and happy Friday, everybody. I'm so excited because football is finally back. If you guys saw that game yesterday, yes, it was the Hall of Fame game, but still, it was just really, really nice to be back to football and just to see people playing out there. And we are 8 days away from the Bears season opener, so you want to make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be breaking down the preseason game, who to watch for, and so much more. Also, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Just search for Unbearable Sports. But also, guys, we have a brand new charity that we're going to be working with. So a portion of what we make with this show goes directly to a charity. And this month, and probably for the next 2 months, we'll be partnering with Thorn, which Thorn is made by fellow Bears fan Ashton Kutcher, which helps crack down on sex trafficking. So it's an incredible, absolutely incredible organization that ran by a Bears fan, which is great, but also it's for an absolutely great cause. But also, just by listening, you can help out. But also, for every 5-star rating that we get on Spotify, I will donate an extra $1. So make sure to go out there. You just have to subscribe, rate 5 stars, and then you can unsubscribe for all that I care. But as long as we get a 5-star out there, where I will be donating an extra $1. So thank you guys so much. And let's get into the show. So right now, what we're going to be going through is the running backs. This is the next one on our player profiles list. So first off, we're going to break down some of these news and some of the headlines that are going around the Chicago Bears, because it feels a while since I've recorded an episode. And then we're going to break down all the players on this running back roster. So we'll talk about how much is everybody going to play and the ins and outs, over and unders like you already expect. So are we going to get better? Are we going to get worse? And that's how we're going to really kind of wrap things up. But let's get right into the news and headlines for the day, or for kind of the past 2 days. Now, there's a good amount. So first off, the Bears waived Azoya Alofowahai. I butchered that, but that's probably going to be the last time that I have to butcher that because he's getting waived. He was a defensive interior player, and seeing him at training camp, he was solid, but I understand not wanting him to stay on the roster because he was kind of that Ryan Pace type of player out there. But also, John Alexander, kind of a surprise for me because John Alexander was a UDFA that signed a 3-year deal. And honestly, to me, I thought that he was going to stay, or at least maybe just be a practice squad type of player. I was kind of curious as to why they waived him now, because it seemed like they liked him. I know when we had Blake on the show talking about the Chicago Bears, he actually liked what he saw of John Alexander because he was a bigger player out there. But what did we do? We ended up adding Devontae Harris, the cornerback from the Chargers, the Denver Broncos, the Baltimore Ravens. He's been around in his 3 or 4 year career out here. He's a former Illinois State Redbird from a college perspective. And to me, he's just a backup, kind of a special teams type of player. Probably more so battling the Greg Stromans of the world and Lamar Jacksons for those backup spots. Or maybe even a Kendall Vildor, even though he's typically been with the starters. But then the other guy that we ended up adding to was one Trevon Coley, who hasn't played since 2020. Now, he is a defensive interior player, more of a B-gap type of a player, so not necessarily the big zero tech guy, but more of that 3 technique, as we've kind of talked about before. But overall, he really hasn't had good production. I just have the PFF numbers up right now. He's ranked 51, or scored a 51, a 39, which is absolutely terrible, and a 47, which is also really bad. So I think that what he's doing is they're bringing him in, and yes, he was kind of a starter for Cleveland, but I think they're just trying to see, does he have something in the tank? Because it's been a couple years, and he was a former starter, and we've talked about it too. this interior spot might be a little bit weak on that defensive side. So we shall see. But let's keep on moving down the road with some of this news. And the big news just keeps on coming. Teven Jenkins, the trade rumors just continue to be confirmed. It looks like the Bears are shopping him, but also it looks like they're not completely done with him yet. Luke Getsy today in an interview talked about Teven Jenkins and said, hey, he'll compete for a job when he's healthy. So when he's healthy, then we might see him out there. But so if there's any conspiracy theories that Teven Jenkins might not truly be injured, I mean, it still could be out there, but it was nice to at least hear from Getsy that he's like, hey, when he's healthy, when he's ready, he's going to be competing because it's an open competition. And that's really the biggest news from this training camp so far is this offensive line. Braxton Jones for the past two practices has been the first team left tackle, and it really doesn't seem like anybody else is getting those tackle snaps. Does it mean he's locked in day one as the starter? No, it does not mean that, because Getsy was also saying they want to swap people out and they want to see what gives them the best situation. So Doug Kramer, Sam Mustipher are swapping out at center, and Jatiri Carter and Michael Schofield have also been competing at the starting right guard position. So today and the day before, Larry Borum and Riley Reef have been swapping out at the right tackle spot. So if you're watching right now on YouTube Live, let me know, who do you think is going to be the starting tackles? Or what is the starting offensive line for the Bears? Because personally, it's hard for me to say that Braxton Jones is going to be the starter. I know when we did our draft review, we talked about that the Bears, they drafted 4 offensive linemen because they hope to hit on at least one of them. Now, it seems like we've already hit on Braxton Jones, but we have to see what happens when he's going against actual competition. And that's where this preseason game is just going to be incredible to watch, because there's so much what could actually happen out there. But also, too, the last little bullet point that I have is just the defense still continues to do well, still continues to do great. And it's not saying that the offense is bad, but the offense is making steps forward. Like today, it seemed like a good step in the right direction, but still the defense seems ahead. But yet at the same time, that's just us as Bears fans. But I'm starting to get some of the messages in. Reload is saying Braxton Jones. And that's what we're saying. Braxton Jones could be that guy. Darrell Upton, sorry if I butchered your name, but Jones is at the left and Riley Reef at the right. That's what he's thinking. And I'm excited for that. I would love to see Jones at that left tackle spot, Riley Reef at the right. I just want to see Justin Fields upright. And if Braxton Jones comes in and just plays solid, man, I'm going to be head over heels because would we have our franchise left tackle that we got, in the 5th round? Absolutely incredible. And also, a lot of offensive linemen have played as rookies and done well. I'll actually put together that stat. So follow us out on Twitter, and I'll post that stat a little bit later on, probably tomorrow. We'll see. But let's continue on with the actual show. Let's talk about these running backs. So the running back position I think that this is the most loaded position that we have out here. We have David Montgomery as the starter, Khalil Herbert as the backup, Trestan Ebner as the 3rd stringer, and Darrington Evans as the 4th string running back that we have out here. And the last but not least, we have Mr. Tuggle, who is our 5th string running back. Probably maybe a practice squad guy if he ends up doing well, just to have an extra little guy out there. But we won't go through him too much. Like I said, in our training camp episode, he showed some signs, but the thinking about him as being on the roster is very, very far away. So let's start things off with one David Montgomery. So David Montgomery last year, 225 rushing attempts, 849 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and unfortunately only 3.8 yards a carry. After all these sorts of breaking tackles that he's able to do, he still falls short of that 4 yards a carry. Why? I blame Matt Nagy. And I don't love always blaming every single one of the Bears' problems on Matt Nagy. But when Matt Nagy was running the football, if you remember back to the Jordan Howard days, Jordan Howard, when he was with John Fox, we said, we know that we're running the ball. We know that they're going to be running it on first down, then they're going to run it on second down. But still, Jordan Howard was able to get yards. Why? Because running game is so dependent on your system, on your blocking, and then all of a sudden, we switch systems. We switch, the blocking stayed relatively the same, but all of a sudden, Jordan Howard couldn't get any yards. And who was calling plays? Matt Nagy. And it also seemed like every time that Bill Lazor would call plays, the running game would magically all of a sudden appear. And now we're doing halfway decent. But David Montgomery does not get enough credit for how he's able to break some of these tackles. It's absolutely incredible that he's just dancing all over the place. He can catch, he can do it all. And that's why he's so heavily underrated. But the big question is, will he get that respect that he so desperately deserves? Because I think everybody kind of forgets about him. It's not like he's been banged up every single year. He just doesn't get the love because of the system that he's in. And he's in the final year of his contract. And we've already talked about this before. Mikey Betts, a good friend of the show, he's saying that David Montgomery is going to be traded. We'll see. I think him being traded might be a little strong, but it could be a possibility. He has somebody close to him inside the Bears organization that says that. So I don't agree with it, but he's got an inside source. But then also, he's only had 1 year of over 4.0 yards per carry. So David Montgomery not doing the best, but still, this is where stats lie, because we've seen David Montgomery and he is a beast. So I'm excited for this new rushing attack. But also, I want to bring something up too. I was looking at PFF because they track just what direction the people typically run and how well did they do running the football. David Montgomery's best rushing direction last year was when he would go after the right guard, which is no longer here at James Daniels, and he would typically rush for 4.8 yards a carry. Then when he would go around the left end, which is kind of around the left tackle, kind of following the tight end, if you kind of picture it in your mind. And whenever he would do that, that was his second best at 4.3 yards a carry. So what I'm hoping is that when he continues to go to the outside, we can see some of that production. But also, this is where James Daniels and Jason Peters were huge in the running game last year, because that's where we also found our greatest amount of success was around those two players. Where was his worst rushing direction? Well, right tackle, Larry Borum. So that's where we're looking at Mr. Upton out here saying Braxton Jones playing at that left side, Riley Reif playing at that right might be the best option that we have out there from an offensive line perspective. Because then not a lot of people got a lot of success off of Larry Borum's side. His second worst was around the right end, which is, yet again, Larry Borum's side. So David Montgomery not doing well going to the right, but left end found some success. At that right end, only 3.4 yards a carry. Not that great. But also, so what will we see out of here? What we know about this offense is it's a lot of outside. It's a lot of stretching the defense, and that's what I've been seeing as well. When I was at practice, you see a lot of bootlegs, you see a lot of rollouts, which is great for Justin Fields. So with the running, as long as they're kind of going with the outside, the better it will be. But also, Kari Blasingame, I like him at fullback. He looked good when I was out there, when I was seeing him, but also I love the idea of getting a fullback out there. But also on our last episode too, Clay Harbor, former tight end, he talked about this, that a lot of these tight ends can also play that fullback position. Think about a Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin can go out there and block and play that fullback too. And today, Ryan Griffin was looking good in the blocking drills. So we could have multiple fullbacks out there, but I think that overall, though, this running game is going to look good. I think that overall, I'm excited for this because I think that they can finally start to get more yards out there. Now, Ron out there in the comments said Monty needs to be a faster running back, and amen to that. I know that last season he was working on his speed and he was really excited about it. And we saw it for a little bit, but still, he was in college. He actually had the worst breakaway percentage. Whenever he got the open field, just like a Jordan Howard, would always get brought down from behind. I think that's one of the hardest parts about David Montgomery is that breakaway speed. He's great at going side to side and great at breaking tackles. But yeah, that breakaway speed is something that's still missing from his game. But let's go on to the next running back out there. So last episode, we talked about the fullback with Kari Blasingame. And so I really like him. Just a brief little overview. I like him out of the passing game. He looked very good in one-on-ones against linebackers when I was out there. So I like the idea of at least having a fullback. Reminds me of that Kubiak system from the Minnesota Vikings. But let's go over to the second running back out here, and that is one Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech, 5'9", 212. 5'9" seems a little bit small. I felt like he was at least 5'10", 5'11", but they're doing him dirty on his height, I guess. But last year, in limited snaps, only 103 attempts, 433 yards, 2 touchdowns, an average of 4.2 yards per carry, which is fairly good. Honestly, it seemed like when Khalil Herbert came in, there wasn't a drop in production. Like I said, stats do lie, but at the same time, too, Khalil Herbert with the same line, same everything, was still able to do very well. Also, I was looking back at his draft profile, his gap grade. So gap system is not really what we're going to be running this year. His gap system, he was a very low grade, not good at all, but his zone running grade, according to PFF, was like 93, 94, which is elite. We're running a zone system, a heavy zone system. We did last year as well. But with this heavy zone system, I expect Khalil Herbert to do great things. And the big question for me is, can he be the guy? Because we have Khalil Herbert. We have Trestan Ebner. We have some good backup running back. Even Darrynton Evans. I like Evans, and he's our fourth string running back right now. So when you have a David Montgomery, as good as he is, if he wants to get a lot of money, if I'm Ryan Poles, if I'm Matt Eberflus, I'm going, there's this cheap guy that we have named Khalil Herbert that's kind of a beast. Let's see what he's capable of. And also, I forgot who reported it. A Bears insider reported that the Bears really like Khalil Herbert, and we're going to be seeing a lot of Khalil Herbert this year. And honestly, I agree with that. I think, too, this is going to be more of a timeshare, not saying like 50-50, but if you go back to the Green Bay Packers, you see somebody with a Khalil Herbert, and you see A.J. Dillon and the Aaron Jones. You have these two good running backs that were able to split the load evenly and still get crazy production. I see more of it like that. So I think at the end of the games, maybe David Montgomery has 19 carries and maybe Khalil Herbert has 11, which is far more than what we would ever have with our coaching staff before. So I'm excited to see what Khalil Herbert has to offer. Last year, PFF graded him as the 15th best running back out there. And also, overall, though, last year, Khalil Herbert's best rushing direction was, yet again, around the right guard at 7.1 yards a carry. It was a small sample size, but still very good following James Daniels. And his second best was around the left end at 5.4 yards a carry. But then his worst direction was, yet again, right tackle at 2.8 yards a carry. And left guard, crazy enough, at 2.4 yards a carry. Everybody, no matter how you sliced it, people liked running to the left side. And I don't blame them. You have Cody Whitehair, you have Jason Peters. So hopefully Braxton Jones or Riley Reif can be one of those guys that can kind of step up, or Larry Borum or Tevin Jenkins if he ever goes on the field again. One of those guys hopefully can kind of step up, especially at that right tackle spot, because it's scary when you see these numbers. When people were running to that right tackle side, there wasn't a lot going on. and they run it to the left tackle. Now you're starting to see a lot more production out there. So hopefully, I think Khalil Herbert is primed for a good year. I said this on the TSS Fantasy Show. He's somebody that I would actually pick up late in fantasy football, because if Montgomery went down, or if Montgomery gets traded like Mike Hugh Betts was reporting, then Khalil Herbert is going to be the guy. And I really do think Khalil Herbert, he's not a sexy runner like Montgomery, but the dude gets yards. The dude puts his head down. Kind of reminds me of a Nick Chubb, where Nick Chubb just, he gets the yards. He runs away from people. Great contact balance. I think he could do great things. But overall, though, I'm excited for these two guys. I agree with Daryl that we have a super, super strong running back room right now. New scheme and the same old running backs. I really like what we have. But let's go on to the new guys, shall we say. So the new guys, first off, we have Trestan Ebner. This has been kind of a fan favorite. I've been seeing a lot of questions, a lot of comments about Trestan Ebner. So what can I tell you about Trestan Ebner? Well, Trestan Ebner is a rookie 6th-round pick, pick 25 out of Baylor, 5'11", 206, so a little bit taller than a Khalil Herbert, and ran a 4.43 40 time. So decently fast, but my big question is, how much will he play this year? Because we already have two good running backs right out there, but what I think the benefit of Trestan Ebner is his versatility as a receiver. Now, I posted a highlight video out on the YouTube the YouTube channel that shows kind of what he's doing. YouTube copyright struck me with that, so I don't have this on this video, this episode, so you'll just have to search for it, and it's out there. But really, I was hearing some people talk about Trestan Ebner, some people from Baylor, and they were saying, if you give this guy 10 yards, he'll make you pay. And they're like, that's why he's such a great kick returner, such a great punt returner, kind of like a Devin Hester almost, where if you give him some space, he can make you pay because he can fake you out that 10 yards away. He just has the eye for doing something like that. But he's also played out wide and played in heavily in receiving situations, because technically he was a backup running back to Abram Smith at Baylor last year. So it's not like he was the star running back at Baylor. He was the backup. But it doesn't mean that he didn't get production. He had 24 receptions for 317 yards, I believe, last year, then 25 for 288, then 26 for 294. And I totally agree with Daryl Upton out here. He's saying, like, yeah, he's a weapon. I agree. I think that Ebner is going to be somebody that's kind of that chess piece that you can move around. I was thinking that Velus Jones Jr. was going to be leveraged that way, but I think that kind of at the need of receiver, I still think Jones could be used that way, but I think Ebner is going to be more of that third down receiving option that maybe I love the option of like keeping your wide receiver, your running back lined up as like an X wide receiver. And then kind of when you move them in and then you kind of see what the defense is playing. But with Ebner, you could just leave him out there. And then you're like, all right, you're lining up a linebacker against him. Let's go. And just run a little drag route across the middle. Boom. Easy yards. So I'm excited to see what Ebner has to offer. He's already popping in training camp. People are saying that he is looking fast, looking explosive. And the biggest thing, just a different change of pace at the running back position. Now, the last one that we're going to go through today is Darrynton Evans. Now, Darrington Evans was a former third-round pick from the Tennessee Titans. He was out of Appalachian State, 5'10", 203. Now, my biggest question is, what's his role if Trestan Ebner now becomes that third running back? Now, is he kind of the backup running back where Ebner never really is a running back? Ebner's more of a weapon, a third down guy, and then Darrynton Evans is the backup of the backup where you just kind of have him out there. It's because we claimed him off of waivers and he still has 2 years left on his deal. Now it's a rookie deal. It's cheap. You could still probably stash him away on the practice squad if you really want that backup running back out there. Or if you want to house 4 running backs, which sounds a little high to me, you could still do that because it's not crazy high, but it's not a little bit of running backs out there. But honestly, I know that Ebner and Herbert and Montgomery get all the love. I really like Darrington Evans out there. Seeing him play, he was quick, he was fast, he's got good size. I like him. And this is just where, across the board, I should have saved this for the last because, man, this just puts you in a good mood. You look at the running backs that we got with Herbert, Ebner, and Evans, and Montgomery, you feel good. This is where, like, running backs, we have a good stable of these guys out here. And honestly, I would have stats of Darrynton Evans, but really looking back at it, did not play too much. Last year was pretty much out all year with the knee injury. So doesn't have a lot of production, doesn't have a lot of wear and tear, honestly, because he's not getting a lot of those carries. But I still like this player. I like this running back room, and there's not much else I can say. I just love what we're going to be doing with this team overall, and hopefully we're running more play action, which should make the passing game a lot better and also the running game a whole lot better. Now, let's get over to these over-unders out here. Now, over-unders. These are the running back rushing stats from last year. So the first one that I have out here is the average rushing yards per attempt was 3.93. This is for the running backs, because if you look out there, it's like 4.2. That's all Justin Fields. The quarterbacks in this exercise don't count because, quarterbacks will definitely get more than that 4 yards. And to me, this is an easy over. And now some of this stuff might be super simple because I think that over 3.93 yards a carry, if we don't get that, if we don't break that 4 yards per carry average for our running backs, something went wrong. Something went terrible. It's going to be a sad season for all of us because I feel like we're all kind of leaning on this running game. But actually, speaking of that too, I just want to bring this up because it is slightly a concern. But this run blocking, when you switch out a lot of players as we're trying to find the best combination, that's great to find the best pass blockers. But when you get to the run blocking, you need people that understand where your brothers are at, right? You need to know, if you're Braxton Jones, you need to know where Cody Whitehair is going to be. You need to know where Lucas Patrick is. You need to know where everybody is. So that's the only thing that gets me nervous. I remember way back at the beginning of the offseason, I was talking to Nate Mindham, who runs the Cue It Up Billiards podcast, but he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And he was telling me that last year, the offensive line did not look good run blocking, and then you started to see it get better and better and better. That's how offensive lines are. They gel together, they get used to where everybody's at, and then the running game gets better. So maybe the first game, maybe we don't see great running production. Hopefully we do, but if we don't, let's not go crazy. We know that offensive lines, rushing games need time to just practice together and get those reps. But yeah, I agree with everybody out there. Ron out there, Daryl up there. The rushing average way over 3.93. I want to see it at least 4.2. I want to see some good. We have good running backs. Let's use them. So the next over. Next over under is rushing touchdowns. Last year, we only had 11 rushing touchdowns from our running backs. Not great. I think overall it was about 16 rushing touchdowns. 2 of those were Justin Fields. A couple of them were wide receivers or tight ends because, Matt Nagy likes doing that. But the number is set at 11. And honestly, to me, another well over. If I easily expect us to be running, I at least expect David Montgomery to get 11 touchdowns. That's what I'm hoping for, 11 rushing touchdowns, because we should be at least getting 1 every single game, at least. So I want that to be 1. I want that to be 2. Now, I like the plays that we're running in the red zone drills, but still, it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you hear the ups and downs of these red zone drills, and it's always easier, and to me, it's safer to just run the football, right? So next, though, we have number of rushing yards. Yet again, I took away Justin Fields' numbers. So to me, this to me was actually one of the hardest ones with not so much, 1,450 rushing yards for the running backs. And this to me, I let me know what you think. I'm saying over. I'm saying over for the rushing yards, over 1450, because this is going to be a cumulative effort. I think that David Montgomery is going to get a handful of yards, but I also like Khalil Herbert getting a handful of yards too. And I think that you have to establish the run with this offense to work, because with that run being established, everything else will open up. The passing game will be easier. So I love this being over. Now we also have I don't consider this a hot take, but we have an at least double the number of rushing touchdowns from Darryl. So at 11, going all the way up to 22. And yeah, it seems high because it's like, we're going to double it. But honestly, when you had 11 last year, it's not that bad. But the last over-under, how many 1,000-yard running backs will we have on this roster? I put the number at 0.5. So basically the question is more so, are we going to have a 1,000-yard rusher? This to me is honestly one of the hardest ones, because I want to say yes so quickly and just be like, yeah, you kidding me? We're going to be running the football. We're going to be able to get some yards out there. But I just don't know how much Khalil Herbert's going to get the football, because Khalil Herbert might be getting some of these carries. And we've already talked about Trestan Ebner. That's where I get a little bit nervous, because, I mean, not nervous, it's more so excited that I don't know if we're actually going to hit an 1,000-yard rusher, because I just want to distribute the wealth. But I think overall, I think Montgomery ends up getting 1,000 yards rushing this year. I think that he ends up doing it. So I think it's an over. We get the one. But let me know down in the comments, how many yards do you think we're going to get? The New Holistic Company says 2,300 rushing yards combined for Monty, Juice, and Justin Fields. And I like it. I like it because Justin Fields, we should hopefully see him actually running the football now, because with him going to the outside, use this guy with like the fastest 40 time as a quarterback. Use him on the outside. Use him rushing the football, because he's really fast. He's really good. Just as long as he learns, use the baseball slide down, don't fumble the football, just be safe. You're the franchise. We don't want to see you get injured. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting a super high draft pick, but I don't want to watch an entire season without Justin Fields. I'll be honest right there. That might be a little brutal. I don't want to see Trevor Siemian out there. So I'm excited to see David Montgomery. Hopefully he's able to get that 1,000 yards. Honestly, too, I want to see David Montgomery dominate. It was really cool to see him also open up on an interview talking about his mental health situation with depression. It was really cool to see him just open up and talk about how he got help. And he's going to be a father, and I'd love to see him get that 1,000-yard mark. But now, it's the last little question that we have out here. It is, did we get better at the running back position? So, really last year, the only person that we lost, I totally forgot about this guy, Damian Williams, was our backup running back that we have since gotten rid of and replaced. We don't have Tariq Cohen anymore, but Tariq Cohen, unfortunately, didn't play last year. Wish he was on the team, but unfortunately, he's not. Now, I look at this roster, and I liked Damian Williams, but I got to say that this is going to be better. I'm totally excluding scheme from this. I'm just focused on the talent, the players. I like that you have the diversity at the running back position. I think, too, Montgomery's going to be better. Herbert's going to be better. Ebner gives you that change of pace. And also, Evans is a good player. I think that this is just going to be a good team out there, and I think that this is an easy that they got better. So to me, I'm pumped about this running back group. I'm pumped to see this running game, and we're only 8 days away from the start of the season. Now, also, just looking at some of the comments, New Holistic Company says that that overall, it's going to be 1,200 rushing yards. I believe that's from Montgomery. So, yeah, I think that it's a doable thing. The biggest question is just going to be the timeshare. How much are they going to be splitting the wealth? And I do hope that they just continue running the ball, establish that dominance. We know that Braxton Jones is a good run blocker. But I also saw another question up there. I can't scroll up in my comments, so actually, here we go. So I just want to bring this up. So Reload asked, do you think we can sign another player? So I'm thinking about that mainly from the offensive line perspective. I think we can, but I think the bigger question is, do you want to? Especially with this offensive line, because think about it. You're going to have a lot. I think that Eberflus mentioned that he wants to have 8 people on this the offensive line, because it kind of slipped out. He's like, you typically want 8 people on your roster, and then you could kind of see him like, crap, I just let that out. So to me, you have your tackles, Braxton Jones, you have Riley Reif, and then you have Larry Borum. Borum probably as your swing tackle, right? And then that's where Tevin Jenkins, where I see them trying to trade him, is because where do you put him? They don't like him at guard. They mentioned that he's a tackle. So, yeah, I could see the reason why that they're trying to trade him, even though you'd like to have him stay. But then on the interior, you have Jatiri Carter battling it out at the right guard spot with Schofield. And the center spot, though, is the only thing that's interesting. I don't think that they'll really sign someone, because you're hoping, early reports are saying that overall Lucas Patrick should be back at the beginning of the season. That could definitely change when games start coming up and you start hearing more about the injury and how serious it actually was. If it was a serious injury, now you need to ask yourself, is Sam Mustipher the option? Is Doug Kramer the option? Because if not, then, Doug Kramer can chill on the practice squad, but Sam Mustipher, maybe you can't stash him there, and you got to say deuces to him, and you sign a J.C. Treader or another type of center that's out there. But J.C. Treader's really the only sexy name at that center position that you could potentially bring in for an upgrade. There's probably a couple others out there, but he's kind of the first one that really came up. But guys, we are so close to football season starting up. Make sure to like and subscribe. Like I said before, too, search for Unbearable Sports out there on Spotify. For every 5-star rating we get, I'll donate $1 out to the Thorn organization, which helps fight human trafficking, which is an absolutely just incredible cause to get behind with the Thorn organization. They help fight that. So it's an absolutely great organization. But with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.